I first completed a Bachelor of Health Science with honours, and my intention was to go straight into dietetics. But when I was doing my bachelor degree, I became fascinated with genetics. So I put off doing dietetics and ended up going and doing a PhD in human genetics, which I loved. And I got a job in academia actually teaching. But then I sort of felt that draw to nutrition and dietetics again. So I went ahead and did a master's of nutrition and dietetics. Well, things that happen is, say, our body composition changes and we have less lean muscle mass, called sarcopenia, more visceral fat around our organs, our fat distribution changes. We lose bone mass. It's called osteopenia or osteoporosis when it becomes a problem. Generally reduced physical activity, because often people are retired and there's just naturally, because of their lifestyle, there tends to be reduced physical activity, and tendency to put on weight because of those reasons. Sometimes taste changes, appetite changes. Sometimes medication can cause taste changes. Sometimes, chronic diseases develop. Sometimes social situations change. People can be living in different circumstances, maybe retired, maybe have less disposable income. So therefore, all those result in changes to our nutritional needs or ability to keep up good nutrition. Two of the big ones are calcium and vitamin D. So calcium, we just become naturally unable to absorb it as well as we age. The enzyme that we use to break down lactose is called lactase. And basically from teenage years, that enzyme starts to reduce its ability to work well. And as we get older, it's more difficult to break down lactose in milk. So people might find that milk starts to bother. They can often tolerate a little bit, but maybe not too much. So it's important, I think, then to just move to lactose-free milk. I mean, I do it myself. Lactose-free milk's sweet. It's naturally sweet because the glucose has been released by being broken down already. So it's actually quite nice if you like a bit of sweetness in your tea and coffee. If you have lactose-free milk, it will add a little bit of sweetness. But yeah, I think, it's freely available now and it's not terribly expensive. So yes, that's one thing. Maybe people, if they do have a bit of a problem with milk, just try the lactose-free milk. And also vitamin D helps with absorption. So they're very important. Also, mostly for Australians, it's not a problem, but it can be for some, to ensure that there's sufficient protein in the diet, to make sure that muscle mass is maintained. And also fibre sometimes can be a problem, not only for gut health, but also for our microbiome. It's important to have fibre. And, it's important, there is a little bit of evidence out there that a nutrient-dense diet can help with prevention of dementia. I think it's better to get everything through nutrition. And I think with a good diet, it's possible. I wouldn't just recommend without looking at somebody's diet and seeing how their diet is and if it might be able to be supplied naturally, I think. And also some of our foods are supplemented. Say margarine is supplemented with vitamin D, for example. That's just an example. So yes, it certainly depends on the diet. The more recent evidence suggests that it doesn't slow down really until we reach 60. And at 60, it goes down almost 1% each year. So that can be about 10% a decade, say. So, of course, less nutrient requirements. But it's not as big an impact as I think people think sometimes. I think there are other, like people tend to put on weight as they get older, but I think there's more things involved. It's not just well, sometimes I think saying it's my metabolism it could be a little bit of an excuse, because certainly, it's important to think about other things such as physical activity and that type of thing. As I mentioned, with osteoporosis, it's important, the calcium and vitamin B. So it's important to, we get mostly our calcium from dairy products, like milks and cheeses, yogurts, etc. But also, you get calcium from, if people don't like animal milk, you can also, it's fortified often in plant milks as well. So they're certainly very important. And also, your vitamin D from your oily fish and cod liver oil, eggs, etc. And as I was saying before, margarines are fortified. Margarine, I think there's a myth there about margarine being, I read somewhere about being one step away from plastic or something, which is absolutely incorrect. It's basically just whipped vegetable oil, whipped with water. And there are additives to it, preservatives to some of it, but margarine isn't the baddie that's often, the myth that's often conceived to be a baddie. And mushrooms are also a good source of vitamin D. Mushrooms are like us. You can put them in the sun and the vitamin D content increases, which is quite interesting. So if you buy mushrooms, you can put them on the front of your car as you're driving back from the supermarket and get some more vitamin D in them. Yeah, certainly with heart disease, it's important with heart disease to focus on whole foods, nutrient-dense food, fruit and vegetables. Hardly any of us, any Australians, eat enough fruit and vegetables. Our 5 serves of vegetables and 2 of fruit a day, I think under 10%. And it's certainly important. A little bit more as people get older, they tend, looking at the statistics a little bit as people get older, but still nowhere near enough. So focus on fruit and vegetables, whole grains. If people have problems with irritable bowel, there's something called a FODMAPs diet, and a dietitian or doctor can help with that, just to work out what things actually might irritate. It won't be everything. It'll just be some things in certain categories. Lean protein's important, fiber's important. Again, careful with the FODMAPs there with fiber, because they're, carbohydrates, fermentable carbohydrates. It's important to focus on good fats, such as olive oil, say. Oily fish, try and avoid saturated fat is important. Try and avoid heavily processed and sugary foods. Particularly saturated fats and sugary foods together are particularly bad. Try and, watch salt, watch sodium. So they're important for heart disease. Physical activity helps prevent age-related muscle mass, which is very important. And also it helps with bone density. So actually putting pressure on the body. So that's important. It improves metabolism. Make sure that the protein nutrient needs are utilised correctly. Physical activity can help with digestion and with nutrient absorption. It helps with, maintaining a healthy weight, can improve appetite. And so it's, it's a very important part of nutrition planning, physical activity. Well, sometimes, when people are alone, they might lack motivation to cook. So they can tend to go for fast food, or maybe even, not eat at all, basically. Also, social interaction, it helps people, well, it can avoid depression. So, sometimes when people are depressed, they tend not to be interested in eating. Sometimes without a support network, it's difficult to access healthy food sometimes. Maybe it's difficult to go shopping, less interest, less encouragement, maybe less assistance perhaps. So it certainly can be a risk for poor nutrition. Increase, nutrient-dense foods. So try and get that fruit and veg intake happening. The 5 of vegetables, 5 serves of vegetables and 2 serves of fruit. Focus on lean protein. And, more fish, perhaps. Tinned fish is fine. Some people, are concerned about tinned fish, but it's been shown that, 3 times weekly, there's no issues with mercury. There can be a problem, but if you focus on, having it 3 times a week, it's generally considered fine. I would suggest try and get those home cooking skills up, because often people, will have more time in retirement to get into some home cooking. And lots of people, older people, there's this myth that older people aren't involved in the internet and social media and all the rest of it, but it's not true. So there's so much good information online. There's good Facebook groups and, social media where people can, even if people are on their own, they can connect through social media with other people. There's budget cooking sites and there's places where you can have a meal with other people. So I'd say that's really important. I'd say try and, with regards to fruit and vegetables in particular, I'd say to try and use vegetables in cooking in different ways. So perhaps putting them in, bolognese sauce, for example, grate your zucchini and your carrots and put it into the sauce. You don't even know it's there, that type of thing. And try and get enough dairy, try different cheeses. Now's an opportunity to try all those different types of cheeses that we have in our supermarkets now. We've got a huge selection these days. So that's really good. Maybe try different whole grains that you wouldn't normally have, like, say, quinoa and couscous. I actually, when I cook fish, my barramundi, I have frozen fish and I thaw it out and then I just roll it in couscous and then spray it and bake it. And it's sort of almost like having crumbed fish. It's beautiful. Honestly, there are so many sites, government websites that are good. Dietitians Association of Australia, Nutrition Australia is good. There are, I follow a lot of people on Instagram. There's some people have fantastic recipes on Instagram, lots of beautiful salads, lots of fresh sort of food preparation, and quick and easy because they have to do it in a very short Instagram reel. As we age, sometimes we don't regulate our temperature as well. Sometimes our thirst decreases. Sometimes medication, means that we need to keep well hydrated and our body composition changes, etc. So it's crucial, to avoid urinary tract infections and overall health, cognitive function, etc. But the advice is generally 6 to 8 glasses of water. Well, I know that a lot of people like me don't like water, the taste of water. So I think it's important to think about, flavouring water. There's a cordial that I use. It's actually sweetened with stevia. That's beautiful. And also, flavoured tea. So it doesn't have to be water. So there's this myth that it has to be water. That's definitely not the case. And in fact, you get fluids from some vegetables that have got high water content, like watermelon and cucumbers, oranges, etc. So soups and jellies, etc. So don't just focus on water. Don't just focus on water basically from the tap. You certainly get liquid from other sources. I was actually looking at that not so long ago, and they've done some studies looking at people's diets and depression in particular. And they found that a high intake, it sounds like I work for a fruit and vegetable company or something, but they found that a high intake of fruit and vegetables is associated with being able to manage depression better and also to actually to ward off depression developing. So I think that's fascinating that, fruit and vegetables are so important in our diets. But certainly that also another thing I'll say, not so much mental health, but with dementia, they've found that the research that shows the most promise has shown that a Mediterranean style diet seems to be the best to ward off dementia. That's what the current knowledge is. Well, I think it's important to consider that organic food also uses pesticides. The only difference is that they're organic pesticides. Just because they're organic doesn't necessarily mean they're not poisons. It's all about something called the dose makes the poison. So almost anything can be poisonous at a very high dose, even water. And a large study was done that showed that any potential negative effects of having non-organic produce, from pesticides, was completely negated by actually eating a higher quantity of fruit and vegetables. So that provided more health benefits to eat a higher quantity of fruit and vegetables that weren't organic, versus being worried about, being concerned about the fact that they used pesticides. So that was one of the big studies. It's also important to think about the fact that about 99% of pesticides that we consume are actually naturally occurring from fruit and vegetables. Fruit and vegetables produce their own pesticides to protect themselves from bugs, etc., or invaders. And for example, solanine in potatoes. So that green that we get in potatoes is toxic to us, and it's a naturally produced pesticide that potatoes produce. So it's important to think of that as well, put it all into perspective. When they're retired, they don't have as much income, and they might think, I should be buying organic. But if they sort of realize that actually it's not so important, they can purchase non-organic and not be so worried about their health. Yeah.